Hey, I'm Mike Lorelli with RealBusinessSkills.com. It can be a tough world out there in PowerPoint land. Often we spend a lot of time in PowerPoint, but the product we create often doesn't seem to match the effort we put into it. We have all this great information, we have insights we want to share, but the slides can often be a hindrance to us achieving our goal, as opposed to something that's really helping us get there even faster. So I wanted to create a video for you all on how to be faster in PowerPoint and some important fundamentals that will make all your presentations look better. But before we get into the content, a few moments on my background so you know I'm not just some random guy prognosticating about something I'm not an expert in. I started my career at McKinsey & Company, one of the top tier management consulting firms in the world, and PowerPoint's a big deal there. When we would make a deck for a client, let's say it was a proposal that they spend billions of dollars to acquire a competitor, that deck had to convey the highest level of professionalism, rigor, and attention to detail. Ultimately, those decks were an extension of our brand. Now, after McKinsey, I've worked in leadership roles at multiple large companies, which I still do to this day. So I've made a lot of presentations to Fortune 500 executives over the years, and I do see those presentations as an extension of my personal brand, because when the quality of them matches the quality of my work, I'm building the case that I should continue to grow and move up in the company. So that's me. A final point before we get into the content. In the show notes below, you'll see a link to a PowerPoint summary you can download for free that clearly summarizes everything I'll go over with you in this video. It also includes some practice pages so you can learn by doing as you watch. And if you're interested in taking things even further, you can also visit my website, realbusinessskills.com, which has a comprehensive online video training on how to impress and influence with PowerPoint like a top-tier consultant. Now, most PowerPoint trainings out there are tutorials on how to use the PowerPoint program. The Impress with PowerPoint course is very different than that. It's really the process from a consulting and corporate leadership perspective on how to start with your goal, and then turn that goal into a powerful and convincing storyline that ultimately becomes a well-structured, impressive PowerPoint deck. Now, in addition to the video training, it gives you access to a lot of valuable guide materials and templates so that 95% of the slides you'll ever make, you'll have a ready-to-go format to put into PowerPoint to make you that much more efficient. But now on to my advice for this topic. We're going to go over 5 things that will make you faster and better at PowerPoint. Setting up the PowerPoint interface so you have quick access to commands you'll often use. Using Control and Shift to more easily and precisely copy, create, and move objects around the slide. Using grouping commands to position all the objects on a page in a professional way. Some useful keyboard hotkeys that will simply save you some time. And finally, creating the right defaults in terms of fonts, shapes, and lines so you don't have to spend as much time formatting things. So let's dive into these. If you've downloaded the practice materials from the link in the show notes below, have them opened up on your computer and go to the practice exercises section on page 25 so you can pause between each of the suggestions and try them out yourself. The first item we'll go over is the PowerPoint interface. You'll notice at the top left-hand corner of the PowerPoint program there's a set of quick access commands. I have the defaults here, but you may have changed these from what they were originally. Click this down arrow right here and start by making sure the Save and Email options are checked. I don't need any of the other options listed here, so I'll uncheck the rest. But if you think you'd find having easy access to any of the others listed useful, feel free to leave them checked as well. Next, we'll click More Commands toward the bottom of the dropdown, which opens up this menu. You'll notice that all of the actions currently on the Quick Access toolbar are currently listed in this left section. But we want to add more so the commands we'll use frequently are easily available rather than being buried somewhere in the ribbon. So we're going to select this leftmost dropdown and click the Home tab. Every action you can take on the Home tab in the ribbon is listed here. Now let's add some valuable commands. First, we're going to add the Bring to Front command by clicking on it and then clicking Add. Notice that this moves the command into the Quick Access toolbar list on the right. Then we're going to add Send to Back, Align Objects Center, Middle, Left, Right, Top, and Bottom. Then we're going to add the Distribute Horizontally and Vertically. Click OK, and now you can see all of these commands in your Quick Access toolbar, which you can use by clicking them or by pressing Alt and the number that comes up for a given command. Now let's go through these other commands we've added. I'll be using the practice materials you can access through the show notes that I mentioned earlier, so feel free to pause as we go through this to practice yourself. Objects in PowerPoint are stacked in the sense that some will cover others based on how close to the top they are in comparison to other objects. Whenever you create a new object, it's on top of all the others. So on this page, if I were to create a box around the text, it would cover that text. This is where I can use the Send to Back command. I highlight the box and then click Send to Back. You can see that this makes the text visible again because the box is now behind it. And we can also do the opposite. In this slide, I've created 3 circles with numbers to delineate 3 rows of information. But as you can see, they're behind the boxes that are matched with them rather than in front. So I'm going to highlight all 3 of them and use the Bring to Front command, which as you can see gives the effect I'm looking for. Next are the Align and Distribute commands, which are a great way to get rid of a problem that makes your slides look very unpolished. Here you can see a set of boxes toward the right that are clearly not lined up properly, leading to a very unprofessional look. I can highlight all of them and then use the Align Objects Left command to make them perfectly in line and giving a much cleaner look to the slide. Align Objects Left will move all the objects you highlight to the left so they line up with the object you selected that was the farthest to the left, which in this case was the bottom rectangle. Another way to line up these boxes would be the Align Objects Middle command, which, as you can see, moves them all toward a midpoint. The same can be done in any direction. On this slide, I can use the Align Objects Top command to get the boxes and the text aligned properly. But you can probably notice there's still a problem. The objects are not spaced apart evenly. Some are close together, some are far apart. This is where the Distribute commands are very helpful. By using the Distribute Horizontally command on the boxes and the text, we can achieve a more uniform look that's much more professional looking. Unless your slide is a big block of text, these commands we've put in the Quick Access toolbar are almost always helpful in making your slides look better. The next guideline is using Control and Shift to create, copy, and modify objects. This will save you a lot of time because they shorten and make more accurate actions that you take on virtually every page. Let's start with Control. When you highlight objects in PowerPoint, click on them, and then move the mouse, it repositions the object on the slide. However, if you click Control while doing this, you'll notice that the objects actually stay in their original position, and when you unclick the mouse, it creates a copy of those objects. This is much less time-consuming than using the copy and paste function. Holding down Shift has a different impact. This anchors the path in which the objects move so that no matter where you move the mouse, the objects will only go straight up and down or left and right. Then you can combine these 2 keys, Control and Shift, to copy objects and ensure the copy is perfectly in line with the originals. See here how I make 2 new columns of text by holding down Control and Shift such that they are perfectly aligned with each other. Shift is also useful when you're creating or resizing objects. For instance, if you create a rectangle when you're holding down Shift, it will always keep the proportions of a square. And if you hold down Shift when you're creating an oval, it will always remain as a perfect circle. This works for all the other shapes in PowerPoint as well. Then if you resize an object and hold down Shift, it will maintain the proportions of the original. See here how I resize a square and circle while holding down Shift. They stay as a square and circle and never become a rectangle or oval. If I let go of Shift, notice that the objects become disproportioned, but by pressing Shift again, they go back to the original proportions of the shape. Shift is also very useful when creating lines. Lines always have a way of not being just right when you create them in PowerPoint, but if you hold down Shift, it restricts the angle of the line so it can only be perfectly vertical, horizontal, or at a 45-degree angle. The next guideline we'll review is the grouping function. Every object you create in PowerPoint is unique, but you can highlight multiple objects and turn them into a single object that can be moved around and resized as a whole. The shortcut for the grouping function is Control-G. On this slide, I'm going to highlight the 2 boxes and the arrow between them and then press Control and G at the same time. I can now move this grouped object around and resize it so that it takes up the exact amount of space that I want it to. To ungroup this object and make all the pieces separate, I simply highlight it and then press Ctrl, Shift, and G. Grouping is also a great way to center the content within your slides. By highlighting all the content on the page other than the title and footnotes, and then grouping it into a single object, you can then use the Align Objects Middle command in the Quick Access toolbar to center everything really well on the page. Finally, you can use grouping to position parts of a slide appropriately in relation to each other. In this practice slide, I have a table with 4 rows of information, an arrow, and then a set of bullets. This is an example of the from-to structure we go over in the Impress with PowerPoint training. The logic of this kind of slide is useful when you have one set of information that leads to another. I'm going to group the table and bullet lists separately. This means I have 3 objects to work with: the table, the arrow, and the bullets. I'm then going to highlight all of them and use the Align Objects Center command, and then the Distribute Horizontally command to give it all a cleaner, centered look. The next rule we'll go over are some useful hotkeys, which I've listed here. Most people know how to use the keyboard for cut, copy, and paste, but if you don't, know that your mouse should rarely be drifting up here to use the cut, copy, and paste commands. Just use the keyboard with the hotkeys listed. It'll probably add a few days of productivity to your life over time. The Run Presentation command is F5, which puts PowerPoint right into presentation mode, whether you're doing the presentation then or just want to see how things look on the full screen. Additionally, Shift plus F5 goes into presentation mode on your current slide. I'll do this here, and you can see the presentation begins on the same slide I was on right before. Next is Undo and Redo, which I assume most people understand in terms of their functionality, but by having one hand on the keyboard while you're using PowerPoint, you can quickly undo and redo actions when you make mistakes, rather than going up to the Quick Access toolbar with your mouse. Again, it's a minor time savings, but it adds up over time. Finally are the commands to create new slides. You can use Ctrl-M to simply create a new blank, or Ctrl-D to copy whatever slides you have selected. I often want to make a new slide with a similar format as another, so Ctrl-D makes this easy. The final rule on setting the right defaults is best done in a PowerPoint file that uses whatever format you use the most. If you work for a company, this is your standard corporate format. If you're in school, just pick a file that will serve as the basis for the next presentation you make. Now create a new slide with Ctrl-M, and create a rectangle with some text, a text box with some text, and a line. Now, you'll notice that each of these objects have a default formatting. Every time you create one of these, it will be the same color, have the same outline and outline thickness. Also, the font, font size, and other formatting, like whether it's bold or italicized, is always going to be the same when you create these objects. For the rectangle, this formatting will actually obtain for every other shape in PowerPoint, such as circles or chevrons. But you can change this default formatting to whatever you like, which can save you a lot of time. Let's say I want my shapes to be green with black borders, and my lines to be black as well. Also, I want my text to be Calibri font, size 18. Also, since most of my text boxes are bulletized, I want the default to be so as well. I can now right-click each of these objects and select the Set as Default option toward the bottom. And now all of the new objects I create will have that format. A quick note about this functionality: these defaults are now only set for this file. This is why it's good to have a default file on your computer that's formatted the way you want, so you don't have to set your defaults as often. So there you go. If you haven't clicked the link in the description below to download the step-by-step guide and practice exercises I took you through in this video, I really encourage you to do so. I promise that if you practice, these shortcuts will become second nature in no time. Also, as I said before, if you're looking to take your PowerPoint skills to the next level, visit my website, realbusinessskills.com, where you can find more free content, enroll in the Impress with PowerPoint course, which helps you use PowerPoint like a top-tier consultant, and even get one-on-one consultation from me on how to take your big presentation from a goal in your mind to a compelling storyline to a PowerPoint presentation that impresses your colleagues and gets you to your goal.